Starving girls call a stranger, shocked to discover he's a millionaire CEO. The night was unusually quiet, broken only by the faint hum of traffic in the distance. Inside a crumbling apartment, two small sisters sat on the floor, knees pulled to their chests. The wallpaper had peeled away in places, leaving bare concrete visible. A single dim bulb flickered above them, throwing shadows across the room. Lila, just 9 years old, tried her best to look strong. Beside her, Maya, only 7, leaned against her, clutching her stomach. "I'm so hungry," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. Lila brushed her sister's messy hair back gently. "I know, Maya. Just hold on a little longer," she murmured, trying to sound brave. But inside, Lila felt helpless. Their mother, who worked long hours, had not come home tonight. It wasn't the first time. Sometimes she came late, sometimes not at all until morning. The girls had learned to wait. But tonight was different. There was no food left, not even a slice of bread. The silence of their empty kitchen was unbearable. Lila glanced toward the counter where an old phone lay. It was cracked, its screen scratched, and its battery low. She bit her lip, debating. What if nobody answered? What if someone got angry? But Maya's small eyes were filled with tears, and Lila couldn't ignore them. She reached out and picked up the phone. Her little hands shook as she held it. "What are you doing?" Maya asked softly. I'm going to try something," Lila whispered back. She didn't know what number to call. She had no family nearby. No friends they could turn to at this hour. So she did the only thing her young mind could think of. She pressed random numbers. The ringing began. Her heart pounded in her chest like a drum. "What if nobody answers?" Maya repeated, clinging to her sleeve. Lila forced a smile she didn't feel. "Then we'll try again," she said, though her voice cracked. The ringing continued, echoing through the silence of their apartment. Then suddenly, a deep male voice came through. "Hello?" Lila froze, eyes wide in shock. She hadn't expected anyone to answer. Maya gasped and covered her mouth. The voice on the other end sounded calm but firm. It wasn't the voice of someone they knew. It was a stranger. Lila swallowed hard, gripping the phone tightly. Hello?" she whispered, her courage nearly gone. The man spoke again, louder this time. "Who is this? Why are you calling me so late?" Tears welled up in Lila's eyes. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Maya tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Say it, Lila, please." Finally, Lila took a shaky breath. "Sir, we're starving," she stammered. Her voice cracked, but she pushed on. "We don't have any food. Can you help us?" On the other end, silence fell. It stretched on for seconds that felt like hours. Lila's hand began to tremble even more. She pulled the phone slightly away from her ear. "Did he hang up?" Maya asked in a small voice. Lila shook her head slowly. She pressed the phone back to her ear, straining to hear. Nothing. Just silence. She felt her stomach twist in fear. What if he thought we were lying? What if he didn't care? Lila bit her lip until it almost bled. She wanted to apologize, to hang up, but her sister's hungry eyes stopped her. "Sir," she whispered again, almost pleading. Maya leaned closer, trying to catch any sound. The silence grew heavier, pressing down on both girls. The bulb above them flickered once more, as though the room itself held its breath. "Lila, maybe he's gone," Maya murmured, her voice trembling. Lila closed her eyes tightly. She didn't want to believe that. She couldn't let it end like this. "Please," she said softly, her words shaking. "We just need something to eat." Her voice broke complete. "Tally, then." A single tear slipped down her cheek and fell onto the phone. Maya reached up and wiped her sister's face with her tiny fingers. "Don't cry, Lila," she whispered. "You're strong." But even Maya's voice wavered with fear. Together they waited, clutching the phone like it was their last hope. Seconds dragged by. Every tick of the clock sounded louder in the empty apartment. Lila thought about hanging up, but she didn't move. She couldn't. She pressed the phone tighter to her ear, listening desperately. Still nothing. Her heart sank deeper with each passing second. She whispered one last word, so quietly it was almost inaudible. "Please." The silence on the line seemed endless. Maya leaned against her sister, too tired to speak anymore. Her breathing was slow, weak from hunger. Lila's grip on the phone loosened, as if hope itself was slipping away. She thought of their mother and wished she was there. She thought of food, warm and comforting, something she hadn't tasted in days. But all she had was silence, and the fear that she had reached out in vain. The flickering bulb buzzed again overhead. The shadows on the walls stretched longer, darker. Lila's throat tightened. Her fingers shook as she lowered the phone slightly. Her chest ached from holding back sobs. She wanted to protect Maya, but she didn't know how. "It's okay," she whispered to her sister, though she didn't believe it. Maya closed her eyes, resting her head on Lila's shoulder. The phone still pressed weakly against her ear. Lila waited. She waited for a word, a sound, anything at all. But the line remained unbearably still. Her young heart pounded, torn between fear and hope. Would he answer again? Or had the man on the other end already decided to hang up? The silence on the line stretched painfully. Lila's heart raced, terrified the stranger had left. Then suddenly, a voice returned, deep, steady, and unmistakably serious. "Little one, are you still there?" Lila froze, clutching the phone tighter. Yes, she whispered, almost breathless. The man's tone shifted, softer now. "Tell me, who are you? Where are your parents?" Lila hesitated, her throat dry. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Her courage wavered until Maya whimpered beside her. The faint sound of her sister's cry traveled through the line. Daniel Reed on the other end stiffened. He had heard countless voices in his lifetime, business partners, rivals, employees, but never a child's desperate cry like this. He pressed the phone against his ear, listening carefully. "Is that your sister?" he asked gently. Lila blinked back tears. "Yes, she's hungry," she whispered. Daniel leaned back in his leather chair, stunned. This wasn't a prank. No actor could mimic such raw pain. He pinched the bridge of his nose, his chest tightening. "Listen to me," he said firmly. "I want to help you, but I need to know where you are." Lila's lips trembled. We live in an apartment," she stammered. "But I don't know if I should—" Her voice cracked with fear. Daniel closed his eyes, forcing patience into his tone. "You're safe talking to me, I promise." His words carried a weight that even Lila could feel. She wanted to believe him. She pressed the phone closer, taking a shaky breath. "Our building is on—" she began. A sharp beep cut her off. The phone flickered in her hand. The battery icon flashed red. Panic shot through her chest. No, not now," she whispered urgently. Maya's eyes widened. "What's wrong?" Lila shook her head, clutching the phone like it might slip away. On the other end, Daniel's brows furrowed. "What happened? Why did you stop?" Lila's breath came in quick gasps. "The phone, it's dying," she whispered. Daniel shot up from his chair, pacing across his office. The skyline of the city glittered through his window, but he barely noticed. No, listen to me, don't hang up," he said urgently. His normally calm, commanding voice trembled slightly. Lila held the phone tight. "I don't want it to end," she murmured. The device buzzed weakly in her hand. Maya tugged at her sister's arm. "Is he still there?" "Yes, but I don't know for how long," Lila admitted. Daniel pressed the phone closer, his heart pounding. "Please, child, tell me something. Anything. A street name, a number, anything." Lila's eyes darted around their dim apartment, searching her memory. She licked her lips nervously. "I think it's near Near the old market, she whispered. Another beep interrupted her. Daniel clenched his fist, frustration boiling. He wasn't used to being powerless. Yet here he was, desperate for the words of a child. Good, that's something, he said quickly. Keep going. What's the building called? Lila bit down on her lip, trying to remember. It's painted yellow, with broken stairs. Her voice faded as the screen dimmed. Stay with me, Daniel urged. His voice softened again. I know you're scared, but I promise, I won't leave you. The girls could hear the steadiness in his tone. Maya whispered, He sounds like he cares. Lila nodded faintly, though fear still lingered. What's your name, child? Daniel asked. Lila, she replied softly. And hers? He continued. Maya, Lila answered. Daniel repeated their names under his breath, committing them to memory. He had signed billion-dollar contracts, led empires of men, but at this moment, only 2 names mattered. He sat back at his desk, one hand pressed tightly to his forehead. Lila, Maya, he said slowly, I will come to you. Lila's eyes widened. No one had ever promised something so boldly before. But you don't know where we live, she reminded him. Daniel inhaled sharply. Then tell me quickly before the phone goes. The screen dimmed again, warning them. Maya clutched her sister's arm. Hurry, Lila, hurry! Tears filled Lila's eyes as she spoke. It's on Maple Street, she whispered. The phone buzzed again, dangerously low. Daniel repeated it quickly. Maple Street. Good. Which building number? I don't know, Lila cried. I only know it's across from the bakery. The one with no lights. Daniel's heart pounded harder. He scribbled the details down on the notepad before him. That's enough. I'll find you, he said firmly. The girls looked at each other, not knowing if they should believe it. Lila's lips trembled as she whispered, Will you really? Yes, Daniel replied, without hesitation. But even as he spoke, the faint beep returned. The phone screen flickered dangerously. Lila shook the phone in her hands, desperate to keep it alive. Don't go. Please don't go, she begged into the receiver. Daniel pressed a hand over his chest, his throat tightening. He wasn't used to feeling helpless. But at this moment, his wealth, his power, his status meant nothing. The only thing that mattered was that connection. Stay with me, he said, his voice low but fierce. You are not alone. I hear you. I'm coming. The words reached Lila's heart, sparking hope. She pressed the phone tightly against her cheek, closing her eyes. Maya whispered, Is he still there? Yes, but I don't know for how long, Lila answered. The phone buzzed once more, the screen fading to black. Would Daniel reach them in time before the call disconnected forever? The phone line went dead, and Daniel stared at the silent receiver, his jaw clenched as the silence of his office pressed heavily on him. Without a second thought, he grabbed his coat and stormed out, ignoring his assistant's calls. In the lobby, his driver waited by the car and asked where they were going at such an hour. Daniel's eyes burned with determination as he snapped, Maple Street. The driver, startled, warned that it wasn't safe, but Daniel didn't care. They climbed into the sleek black car, and as the engine roared to life, the city blurred past in streaks of neon and shadow. Daniel leaned forward, fingers drumming against his knee, his heart racing harder than in any boardroom battle, urging the driver to go faster. He dismissed the man's hesitation and danger warnings with a firm reply. Those children don't have anyone. They need me. Leaving the glittering towers behind, the streets grew darker, littered with trash and stray dogs, with broken streetlights and boarded-up windows casting an eerie gloom. The driver muttered nervously, but Daniel's eyes stayed fixed ahead, until the car suddenly jolted, the engine failing and rolling to a stop near a narrow alley. Ignoring the driver's calls, Daniel shoved open the door and stepped out, his polished shoes crunching against gravel and glass as the stench of smoke and decay filled the air. Pulling his coat tighter, He pushed forward into the narrow, graffiti-stained alley, past rusted fire escapes and shadows that seemed alive. Behind him, the driver pleaded for him to return, but Daniel's mind was made up. The girls needed him. Then came the sound of footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoing behind him. His pulse quickened as shadows flickered at the edges of his vision, and when he demanded to know who was there, no answer came. Only more steps. Figures emerged from the dark, at least 3 men with faces hidden beneath hoodies. One laughed low and cold, sending a chill through the air. "Look what we've got here," a voice drawled. Daniel refused to show fear, insisting he didn't want trouble, but they ignored his words, sneering about his fine coat and shoes. With no easy escape and his driver too far to help, Daniel warned them to leave him alone, but the leader grinned, declaring, "You're lost, rich man. This is our street." Chains rattled, knuckles cracked, and Daniel's pulse thundered in his ears, yet he stood firm, thinking of Lila's fragile voice and Maya's desperate cry. He couldn't turn back now. As the men circled, shadows stretching like predators across the walls, Daniel reached into his coat pocket, and while they expected a wallet, he pulled out his phone instead. "One call," he said quietly, "and the police will be here for a buzz." Moment they hesitated, but then laughter echoed again. "You think we're scared of police?" one hissed, closing in tighter. Daniel steadied his breathing, every instinct screaming to retreat, yet the memory of 2 hungry girls pushed him forward. The men's eyes glinted, a rusted chain swung threateningly, and Daniel's grip tightened on his phone as his driver's faint shout carried through the night. Surrounded and outnumbered, he faced them with unshaken resolve. Would Daniel make it to the girls' apartment, or fall victim to the streets first? The tension in the alley broke when Daniel pushed forward, refusing to stop. Shadows trailed behind him, but he walked with unshakable resolve, each breath escaping in white puffs as he moved deeper into the forgotten streets until the crumbling outline of a building appeared. Its walls were stained, the windows cracked, the steps broken, and Daniel's chest tightened. This had to be it. Adjusting his coat, he approached the chipped wooden door and knocked softly. After a moment of silence, the door creaked open, revealing a pair of wide, frightened eyes. Daniel froze. It was a small, frail child with messy hair and pale cheeks, and another little face peeked from behind her shoulder. Lila held her sister Maya tightly as they stared at him, and something inside Daniel broke. "It's you," he whispered, his voice trembling. Their eyes darted from his face to his expensive coat, until Lila cautiously asked, "Are you the man from the phone?" Daniel nodded gently. "Yes, I'm Daniel. I came because you called." But Lila pulled Maya closer, and the younger girl whispered, "Don't open too much, Lila." Daniel knelt to their level, his voice soft and sincere. "I promise I won't hurt you." Their fear lingered, but he slowly extended his hand. "I brought food." From his coat he pulled out a small bag, the warm scent of bread drifting into the calzones, held air. Maya's eyes widened, her stomach growling as Lila bit her lip, torn between fear and hunger. Just then a sharp voice cut through the hallway. "What's going on here?" Daniel turned to see a woman with a hard, weathered face, arms crossed in suspicion. "Who are you?" she demanded. Straightening, Daniel replied calmly, "My name is Daniel. I came because these children needed help." She scoffed and stepped closer, blocking the doorway. "Help? From you? Why is a man in a suit looking like money itself standing here?" Though her words cut deep, Daniel remained steady. "They called me. They said they were hungry." The woman, Ada, glanced at the girls, then back at him coldly. "Rich men don't just come running." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Believe what you want, but I'm not leaving them hungry." Lila peeked out timidly. "It's him, Miss Ada. He's the one who answered," Maya whispered. "He brought food." Still unmoved, Ada snapped, "Food or not, I won't let strangers waltz in here." Daniel exhaled slowly. "I understand your concern, but I am here only for them." The hallway grew heavy with silence as Lila pressed her forehead to Maya's hair and whispered, "I think he's telling the truth," while Maya nervously replied, "But what if he's not?" Daniel heard their doubt and lowered his voice. "I have nothing to take from them, only something to give." He opened the bag wider, showing bread, fruit, and milk. Maya's eyes filled with tears, and Ada's hard expression flickered before returning. "Even if you mean well, why these children?" she demanded. Daniel answered firmly, "Because no child should beg a stranger for food." The girl's eyes widened at his words. Ada studied him, searching for lies, until Lila tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Please, Miss Ada, we trust him." Maya nodded quickly, half hiding behind her sister. Ada's expression wavered for a heartbeat, then hardened again. "Rich men always want something," she said sharply. Daniel's voice deepened, steady as Saya tone. "All I want is to make sure they don't go to bed hungry tonight." His words hung heavy in the silence. A dripping pipe echoed through the old building until Maya's stomach growled again, loud and undeniable, breaking the tension. Ada pressed her lips thin, glancing at the food, then at the girls' pleading faces. Daniel didn't push or beg. He simply stood, unwavering. "Please let him in," Lila whispered. "Just this once." Ada sighed, her sharp gaze fixing on Daniel. "You'd better mean what you say." She stepped aside just slightly, leaving the doorway open. Hope sparked in the girl's eyes as Daniel stepped carefully onto the groaning floorboards, the air inside damp and heavy with silence. Ada's eyes followed his every move, suspicion unyielding, while the girls clung to each other, their fragile trust balancing on the edge. Would Daniel earn their trust, or be turned away at the last moment? The tension inside the small apartment hung thick in the air as Daniel placed the food on a rickety table, his movements gentle and deliberate. The girl's eyes followed every gesture, cautious but hopeful, until he opened the bag and pulled out fresh bread and fruit. A faint smile touched his lips as he handed Lila a piece, her fingers trembling as she accepted it. Maya leaned closer, eyes wide, then broke into a shy grin, and for the first time in days, their little faces lit up. Lila tore the bread in half, giving the bigger piece to Maya, and Daniel's chest tightened at the sight of such selflessness. "Eat slowly," he said softly, and the girls nodded, nibbling gratefully as their small giggles filled the room, breaking the silence. Warmth spread through him, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Leaning back, he thought, maybe this was why fate brought me here. But suddenly the door burst open with a crash. Daniel's head snapped up instantly as the girls froze, bread still in their hands. A woman staggered inside, her hair messy, her clothes worn from exhaustion, her eyes darting straight to the stranger sitting there. Clara, Lila and Maya's mother, stood frozen in shock. "What? What is this?" she gasped, her voice carrying panic and fear as she rushed forward, pulling her daughters behind her. "Who are you?" she demanded, trembling but fierce. Lila clung to her mother's arm while Maya peeked out and whispered, "Mama, he brought us food." Clara's gaze hardened, her breathing ragged. "I don't care what he brought. You don't let strangers in," she snapped, glaring at Daniel with shaking hands. Daniel rose, palms open in peace. "My name is Daniel Reed," he said calmly, his voice steady, not defensive, not proud, just true. "I'm here to help." Clara blinked rapidly, the name echoing in her mind. Reed. She had heard it before. Everyone had. Whispers of a powerful CEO, a man with wealth beyond imagination. She stared at his suit, his polished shoes, the way he carried himself. "It can't be." "Daniel Reed," she whispered, her voice cracking with disbelief. He gave a small nod. "Yes, your daughters called me tonight." Clara's eyes widened, heart sinking, as she looked down at her girls still clutching food. "You? You called him?" she asked, trembling. Lila lowered her head in shame. "We were so hungry, Mama," she whispered, and Maya added softly, "We just wanted help." Tears brimmed in Clara's eyes as guilt consumed her. Daniel's voice broke through gently but firmly. They were desperate. I couldn't ignore their call. Torn between anger and gratitude, Clara studied him, searching for hidden motives. Why? She asked bluntly. Why would a man like you care about us? Daniel paused, then answered simply, because no child should cry themselves to sleep hungry. The room fell silent as Clara's defenses wavered. She looked at her daughters, eating, smiling, safe, and a lump rose in her throat. For days she had failed them, and yet this stranger had come when she couldn't. Her eyes softened, though caution lingered. You expect me to believe that's all? She asked. I expect nothing in return, Daniel replied steadily. I'm only here to help. His sincerity filled the room like a quiet light. Lila tugged on her mother's sleeve. Mama, he's kind, she whispered, and Maya nodded eagerly, crumbs on her cheeks. He gave us bread, real bread. Clara's lips trembled, emotions colliding, gratitude, suspicion, fear. But Daniel stayed still, giving her space. He didn't press, didn't push. He just waited. Finally, Clara exhaled a shaky breath. I don't know what to think, she admitted. Daniel inclined his head respectfully. You don't have to trust me right away. Just know, I mean no harm. The girls looked between them anxiously as silence stretched, broken only by chewing. Clara brushed a tear from her cheek. I should be the one protecting them, she whispered. Daniel's expression softened. You are. They called because they believed you'd come, and you did. Stunned by his words, a flicker of hope stirred in her chest. But before she could reply, a loud, thunderous knock shook the door. Everyone jumped. The girls dropped their bread, eyes wide with fear, as Clara spun around pale-faced. Daniel turned sharply toward the sound, muscles tense. The knock came again, harder, rattling the old wooden frame. Who? Who is that? Clara whispered, her heart pounding. Lila grabbed her mother's hand tightly, while Maya instinctively hid behind Daniel. The room seemed to shrink under the weight of the sound. Another booming knock demanded entry. Clara's eyes darted to Daniel, fear flooding her face. Are you expecting someone? She whispered. He shook his head slowly, jaw tight, eyes narrowing at the door. No, I came here alone. The knocks grew more violent, echoing through the building as the neighbor upstairs shouted in irritation. Clara clutched her daughters close, her voice trembling, while the girls whimpered softly, their joy fading into dread. Who was knocking at their fragile door, and what did they want? The pounding at the door rattled the fragile hinges as Daniel squared his shoulders and stepped forward calmly. Clara clutched her daughters close, whispering, Stay back, her voice trembling with fear. The knocking grew louder, angrier, until Daniel finally reached for the handle and opened it, unflinching. A tall, broad man stood outside, face flushed with rage, fists clenched. Clara, he barked, his booming voice filling the cramped apartment. You're 3 months behind on rent! Clara's heart sank as she tightened her grip on her girls. Please, I just need more time, she whispered. The landlord sneered. Time? You've run out. I want the money tonight, or you're out. Lila whimpered, hiding in her mother's dress, while Maya clung to her sister. Clara's eyes filled with tears as she admitted, I don't have it. The landlord's scowl deepened. Then pack up. You're done here. I won't carry freeloaders anymore. Daniel's jaw tightened as he stepped between them, his presence filling the room like a wall of strength. That's enough, he said firmly. The landlord blinked, startled. And who are you? Daniel's eyes burned with quiet authority. My name is Daniel Reed. The name struck the man like a stone. His bravado faltered. Reed? As in the CEO? He stammered. Daniel nodded. Yes. And from now on, this family will never be left hungry or hopeless again. His voice cut through the air like thunder, leaving the landlord shaken. Sweating, the man muttered, I didn't know. Daniel stepped close. Hosea, calm, but commanding. You'll treat them with dignity. No more threats. No more fear. The landlord nodded quickly, backing away. Of course. Yes, sir. Without another word, he fled down the hall, his footsteps fading into the night. Silence returned to the small room as Clara collapsed onto the couch, trembling. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I can't believe what just happened, she whispered. Her daughters wrapped their arms around her, their sobs mixing with hers. Daniel stood still, chest rising and falling, then quietly placed the bag of food on the table. You're safe now, he said gently. Clara looked up, eyes brimming with gratitude. Why? Why would you do this for us? Daniel hesitated, throat tight, before answering softly, because sometimes fate chooses for us. Lila sniffled, peeking up at him. Does that mean you'll come back? She asked timidly. Daniel crouched to meet her gaze. Yes, I'll come back. I'll make sure you're never left alone in the dark again. Maya reached out her tiny hand, and Daniel took it, eyes stinging with emotion. Thank you, she whispered. Clara pressed her hand over her mouth, sobbing quietly. For years she had carried the burden alone. Yet now, a stranger had stepped in, not to take, but to give. Her exhaustion melted into relief. I don't know how to repay you, she said softly. Daniel shook his head. You don't need to. Just promise me one thing. She wiped her tears. What's that? His gaze shifted to the girls. Promise me they'll never lose their laughter again. Clara nodded, clutching her daughters tighter. The girls giggled softly, still holding their bread, and that small sound filled the room with light. Daniel rose, adjusting his coat, his heart both heavy and light. As he walked toward the door, Clara called out, Daniel! He paused, turning slightly. You've given us more than food, she said, voice trembling. You've given us hope. His eyes softened as he gave her a respectful nod before stepping into the hallway. His polished shoes echoed against the broken floorboards as he inhaled the cold night air. For the first time in years, something stirred within him, not pride, not power, but purpose. Glancing back once at the dimly lit doorway, he could still hear the faint laughter of children echoing like a melody. Whispering to the night, he said, Maybe fate dialed my number for a reason. With steady steps into the shadows, Daniel walked on, no longer empty, carrying with him the miracle that had just begun to change everything.